which makes the neighbors all angry, because now they've got to kind of, go around this big sandbar that's been created.
Yeah.
Is there a good word for what's that called? You know,
So the one that you were asking me the other day.
the same thing I was asking you.
That sounds like a lawyer question.
Yeah, it really does.
But you had it right on your tongue the last time. Well, first time
You're
you
hoping
talked
I
about
wasn't
it.
going to slip today?
Well, it's just easier to describe if you have the word, and obviously I'm kind of caught in the middle of it.
Yeah.
But we're doing something on it.
What did you guys end up doing? Like, they're just bringing in more fill, or?
Not much yet. The builder says it's not his problem. It's not
Yeah.
my problem. I've got a contractor that lives on my street, and he kind of secretly said to me, "No, that's his fault. That's the contractor's fault for not taking that into account. Sending all of his water at my house, and it's not like I'm super low. I mean, it won't hit my house, but it's taking some of
Washing
the
away
lawn
into
away,
the canal.
that kind of thing. So, yeah, we'll see what happens.
Yeah, I mean, something like that, I don't want to say we try not to get too involved. We just don't want to overstep. I mean, we're not, as you know, being an insurance guy, we're not the claims adjusters.
Right.
So I don't want to be like, no, it's not covered, and then they don't want to call for that reason. But unfortunately, we hear that a lot on Facebook, where someone's like, they're 3 feet up and all the water's coming into my property. I don't know, like the builder's responsibility to drain that properly. I wish I did. I mean, I know I should have looked that up last time you asked.
It really sounds like a legal question though, instead of an insurance question.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the county is telling the builder that they legally have to build them up, so it's kind of like, how can you fault the builder for doing what the county is forcing them to do? But I also don't know if they have like some sort of grading requirements where they're supposed to make it funnel down into the canal.
Yeah.
I know my own lot, in the back corner, I think I was sharing with you, all the water was coming to the corner, and literally my lawn guy was cutting the grass one day, and I looked out the window, and he was like popping a wheelie because his whole back end got swallowed into a hole, and
Wow.
it was from the draining.
Wow. I do have a little update. I bumped into my neighbor. He just got back from the north, and he owned heavy equipment and did that, maybe even site work and stuff like that. I don't know exactly. But I told him, I pointed at it and I said, look what's happening over here on the city. And he goes, yeah, I've heard about it. He says they should have built like a mound back there and created a pond so that it would stop there and percolate in without, rushing and moving sand, and then, solve the problem once the lawn is in and all that other stuff. Do that as a final step. But
Yeah,
this builder just didn't do anything, and it created a big problem.
yeah, because with no grass, no vegetation, there's no roots kind of
Yeah.
holding the dirt together.
The sand just goes, man. It just goes. Anyway.
What's the ruling now from insurance companies on not insuring houses if the roof is over 15 years old?
Actually, I'll do you one better. So some companies are going to 10-year shingles.
Oh.
Yeah, we had 2 more companies last week send out memos saying that if the shingle roof is over 10 years old, it's ineligible. The carriers that have clients that have 10-year shingle roofs or older, they're actually, they're either A, non-renewing them, or they're raising their rates so high they hope that they just leave them, unfortunately. So I actually hired a guy that literally 8 hours a day, he just reshops our clients.
Really?
Yeah, because thankfully we're a broker, so we can keep them. But yeah, he spends all day reshopping because people are being non-renewed for 10-year-old, and also 15-year-old on tile roofs, some carriers. The reason why is that, not to get too technical on roofs, but like roofers are doing what's called assignment of benefit claims. And they're essentially going around, like Bobcat over there in Northport, how they're all like tile roofs basically. So roofers will go in there and they'll say, oh, 50-mile-an-hour wind blew through here on Sunday or whatever day it was, right? And they'll be like, your tiles probably lifted, right? So they'll go in there and they'll say, because you have 50-mile-an-hour wind and you have wind damage, we can get you a new roof because they can't match those tiles to other tiles, forcing the carriers to pay out full roof claims. So the assignment of benefits is essentially like the roofer making our client or whoever's client sign over something saying like, I give this roofing company full authorization to speak on my behalf. And then they put their lawyers against our carriers and they have to pay. So with that, carriers are like, look, we can't pass legislation fast enough to get that to stop. So we're just going to stop insuring older roofs, 10-year-old roofs, which causes a problem because like we have folks that they're trying to buy homes and they're like, well, the roof's only 12 years old. It's architectural. It's 30-year shingle, 40 years, whatever. And unfortunately, they're being told either A, their options are limited, or B, they have to replace the roof. I'm hoping in time they're able to pass something saying like, look, you can't replace a roof just because a couple of the tiles lifted, give them the repairs, even if they're not matching exactly.
I had a new roof put on my house, my personal house, 13 years ago. And it's a architectural shingle, they're fiberglass shingles, and they were guaranteed for 30 years.
Mhm.
I figured I got a 30-year roof there. I'm not having any problems at all, but I'm thinking my insurance company's gonna come up here in the next 3 or 4 years and say, hey.
Yeah, well, thankfully it's insurance, so I feel like there is always going to be a carrier out there that's going to be willing to charge money for that risk. So the problem, I kind of always explain insurance, especially being a broker, as like doors in a room, right? You got a bunch of doors and they're all open, right? So if these carriers are starting to say 10 years is the max, 15 years is the max, and you're stuck with 1 or 2 doors or options, then you're kind of at their mercy, paying whatever they're willing to charge you to take that risk. One carrier rep told me that unfortunately a lot of people with shingle roofs might be stuck with Citizens in the future. Citizens is kind of known as the state insurer, which is really our last option. We try to use them when every other door is closed.
I remember when a lot of stuff was with Citizens, and now you don't see too much with Citizens.
Yeah.
They cut way
They're
back.
trying to get out, aren't they?
Yeah, so what Citizens will do is they'll take you on and then they'll try to sell you off or pawn you off on another carrier. And you'll get a letter basically stating, hey, we're going to assign your policy to XYZ carrier. If you want to stay with us, sign this and send it back. So they're actively trying to get rid of their customers, yeah. Which, if you're a client of theirs, how well does that make you feel if your carrier is trying to get rid of you? Service is, it doesn't matter how much we want to fight for you, they're the carrier, so they'll do it.
Well,
They
this past year, Frontline came through and came in and took a lot of photos under my sinks and lavatories and in the garage, everything. I live in a house that's built 31 years ago. I've owned it for 21 years or 22 years. It's 9 years old when I bought it. And because it had a Western Pacific fuse panel, they said, well, the fuse panel's got to be replaced. And, well, that's about $1,500. And then every shutoff valve under every sink, the ice maker, the dishwasher, all the hot and cold shutoff valves in the bathrooms and kitchen all had to be replaced.
Yeah.
The hoses to the washing machine all had to be replaced.
Yeah.
And I mean, it wasn't cheap, to get all that stuff done.
I have a Frontline actually for my own house, and not, and I don't want to sound like the insurance guy defending the carrier, but I think what their position is that if we can have the insured spend some money to update those things, then it's less likely you might file a water damage claim for 10,000 or 20,000. And what that does is it limits the chances that you're going to have a $500 increase one year or a $300 increase. Some of these carriers, especially after August 1st, they're having large rate increases. So yeah, you're probably with one of the more sticklers. They're definitely fine.
Are you familiar with a company PCU or
UPC?
UPC?
Yeah. Is it United Property and Casualty or Universal Property and Casualty?
I don't know.
UPC is fine, but if somebody quoted you with UPC
Yeah.
and you haven't switched to them yet, as of last week, they went to 10-year shingles. Mhm. Yeah, it's trust me, that's why I hired a guy to do full-time reshopping, because for one, the clients deserve to be reshopped, but two, if they're being canceled and they call us, we want to make sure we have the manpower to quote them. But it's a real problem. I mean, I had a carrier rep tell me probably 4 to 6 months ago this was coming down the line, and like all things, you think somebody's trying to just kind of make it worse than it is because he's backing that one carrier. But surely, one by one, they're starting to send those memos out telling us about 10-year shingles. I don't try to scare your clients. It's a fine line. I don't want to be like, don't buy a 9-year-old shingle because next year you're going to have to replace it, because that's not entirely true. There's plenty of carriers out there that will still accept the shingle. I have one that will still even go up to 25 years on architectural. But going back to the options, if they're the only ones, you kind of are paying whatever they're willing to charge you.
Well, like I said, it was the old asphalt shingles, but these are fiberglass shingles. These top of the line shingles.
Oh yeah, no, I know. The architectural, you're talking about I know it's not the old ones, the 3-tab shingles. But yeah, architectural, which puts us in a bad position because they're like, well, the seller or the person I bought it from said it had a 30-year warranty and they're 10 or 15 years in. And it's kind of like, that was the roofer telling you that, and that was them backing the shingle. I'm not saying that it won't last that long, but if you're trying to get insurance from an insurance carrier, you kind of are playing by their rules, and there's not much you can do, you know?
Right now, I'm just kind of shopping because I've been with Frontline for years and years and years. Never had a problem. And then this year, I had to fork out about over $2,000 to get all this stuff done. Just so they did give me a $400, sent me a check for $400, but that didn't offset over $2,000.
Yeah.
I'm beginning to kind of look around.
You should be fine though for at least another 5 years with them. Typically, they only do those interior inspections every 5 years.
They still go up every year.
Yeah. Yeah.
I have a question about that. So if you purchase this 30-year product and you have the receipts for it that says it's a 30-year product, and they're gonna start charging you more. So do you have to get like a roof certification, like it says here, and then the roofer's gonna go, it still has 10 more years on it?
Some carriers will accept that, yeah. But the carriers that have went to a 10-year shingle, they're 10 years regardless. We even have one carrier that literally, it doesn't matter if it's a 5-year-old home, they're making us upload a home pre-inspection. So those $300 inspections that clients pay for, they're making us upload that so they can look at every single piece of that house to see if they even want to insure it. I'm hoping that other carriers don't do that. UPC is one now where they'll send a message saying, it's like probably 70% of them, they'll randomly select and say, we need either the 4-point or home inspection uploaded. before we'll even let you bind it. So they're almost pre-approving it before they'll let us, regardless of the age.
I may have you, just give me a quote on doing, insurance on my house.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like it's in good shape now, so that's
It's
good.
in pretty good shape. I
Yeah,
mean, there's a problem, we take care of it.
yeah.
It's got brand new AC put in, 1 year ago. It's got a new roof put on 13 years ago. All the valves under the sinks and shut-offs in their tank, and the fuse panel was replaced in June.
What age is your house? What year was it built?
It was built in '89.
And you've been with
31
Frontline for
years
a
old.
while?
31, huh?
You've been with Frontline for a while now?
I've been with Frontline for a long time.
Yeah. So you probably were with them before they even started doing inspections at all, right? They just started this maybe 3 years ago, I believe.
I've been with them a lot longer than 3 years. I've probably been with them 10, 12 years.
Yeah, yeah. The good news is that you're, for what it means, you should be Frontline certified. I don't know if that it's supposed to make somebody feel better, but when they do the Frontline certification,
They did tell me I was certified,
yeah,
certifiable. Maybe I'm
yeah. Yeah, so it's a challenge for sure. It's just navigating it like in your guys' business. I mean, the worst is the ones that have the spray foam insulation. And then a new buyer is trying to get a wind mitt and all the truss connections are covered with foam. And now they're basically getting no discounts because they can't see the roof decking. They can't see the attachments. I had a lady this morning call and she was fired up because the guy gave her the discounts and I looked at the photos and literally every photo just had spray foam insulation. And we're like, well, they'll get mad at us because we're almost like the go-between between the carrier, but really it's the carrier that's saying no, you know? So if we give them the discount just because the inspector gives it to them and there's not photos that correlate with that discount and we bind it that way, they'll just remove the discounts.
I was talking to somebody just this past week, and, they were saying about how they had a new roof put on, and the roofer went into the attic and sprayed everything with this spray foam. And how much cooler the attic was, and their electric bills had dropped, and this, that, and the other. And I'm saying, yeah, they spray all that on there so they can't find the water leak when it happens. You know, because with spray foam on there, you can't tell where that water's coming in.
Yeah, that makes
A
sense.
lot of times I've talked to some roofers and they don't like it because if you've got a roof leak up here, but it may not be showing up until way down here, it's running down that beam somewhere. Well, they can't tell the leak is not down here where it's leaking into the house. It's way back up here.
Mm-hmm.
And, a lot of roofers don't like spray foam. Boy, they hate it.
Yeah, and the catch for somebody like that has that done is that if they get wind mitt credits from that, those inspections expire in 5 years. So when they have to have a new wind mitt done 5 years from now, and then they're told they're getting no discounts because they can't be verified at that point, I'm sure they won't be happy. Or for the new buyer, because the new buyer, obviously, we're all trying to keep our prices low.
So wind mitt is only good for, 5 years.
Yeah. Some are 3 years, but generally 5. We even have one carrier that they only like 4 points that are only 1 year old. Yeah. So it's all about placing your client with the right carrier. You know, I mean, I have a lady who, just like I have a guy that spends all day reshopping, I have a lady that spends all day shopping, quoting. So like she'll quote everything for me and then she'll send it to me to review before I send it out. But if she's putting it with the wrong company and then we bind them and then 3 weeks later they're being canceled because they have one of the panels and we didn't place them with a company that would accept it, you're not going to be happy. yeah, you got through closing, but who wants to deal with insurance being canceled and spending $1,500 for a panel replacement? There are carriers that will accept that panel. But again, going back to options, you want all the options so you get the best price.
Well, I've been in real estate 15 years now, and I learned early on that certain panels were more acceptable than others. Now I've got a square D, so I don't have to worry about anything.
Yeah.
But, I think it was Western Pacific was what I had. I never had a problem with it. And,
You probably never had a problem before because you said your house was an 89 build, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, so if you got your insurance before it hit over 30 years old, then you didn't need a 4-point with anybody because it was only 20 something years when you got it.
The last 4-point I had, I think, is about 6 years old, about 6 years ago.
Yeah, you might have sent that to the agent, but if
If
the carrier isn't asking for it, we're not going to upload it. We still try to tell the client, like, look, you have one of these panels, I'd still replace it because obviously they're ineligible for a reason. I mean, you don't want even if it's been there for 30 years, you don't want your house to burn down. You're still displaced and then still paying your deductible, you know?
Okay, can I ask you a question about flood now?
Yeah.
Because I need to make sure I have my head wrapped around this. So in my mind, I don't know if this is true, but I think when you're at an X flood elevation, that means that the property's at around 11 feet, 6 inches, and you're good.
An X zone does mean that you're elevated, yes. But it doesn't necessarily have to be 11.6. What it sounds like you're referring to is just the first floor under air. X zones are basically based off of the lot being high enough.
A lot,
Yeah. That's why I'll show you. I was
So
gonna
why
show
do I
you.
have this 11.6 in my head? Where did that come from? Why do I keep thinking that? Somebody must have said something to me once, and I've always just was like, elevation has to be 11.6.
I'll show you.
Maybe it's the guy that
What
sold
if
your
the whole
insurance.
lot, what if the whole lot is in the X zone except for one little tip corner over on the backside may be in an AE zone?
Yeah, so we
But
have.
the house is nowhere near that AE zone. The house is up here on the main part of the lot, and it's in X zone, but part of the lot is in the AE. How does that affect,
I'll show you. This is a.
okay, that sounds,
Yeah, these are those rentals over off Keystone. I just have this one, so like here, I'll pull up the GIS so we can go over one of them. All right, so this here, like let's say that this lot was in an AE and an X, right? So if there was a line that, like, let's say went through here in the backyard, right? And like, let's say back here was AE, but in front of the line was X, then this property would still be an X zone rating.
okay.
Because the only time, let's say that the line ran at an angle or back here and it nipped even just a foot of this structure, then it would be an AE zone. Even if just a little, I had one that was literally like, I'm saying had to have been like 6 inches. I mean, the underwriter zoomed in and she's like, no, the line does in fact go right past it. What we were able to do, thankfully, is we contacted the floodplain manager at the county, and he was able to pull, I guess, even more of a detailed map. And he said that he could verify it was slightly pushed back at some point, and we were able to get them the X zone rating, thankfully. Now, the chances of that happening are less likely than most.
One every 20 years.
Yeah, he actually emailed and said that it wasn't an X zone. Then like an hour later, he's like, no, I pulled one more map and it was the X zone. I'm like, well, thanks. You're the floodplain manager. I expected you to do that.
You know, when you
the
think
first
about it, that's probably just the overhang of the house too. That's, that's
time. Yeah,
10 feet in the air.
yeah. The one guy, when
It's
I
not gonna
told him
get
that, he's like, I'm
flooded
about
up
to
there.
just knock it off. Like, shorten this corner. But yeah, we get that. Or I had a guy on Facebook ask, he's like, I'm about to buy the lot next to me, and the lot next to me is in the AE zone, but I'm in the X zone. Would I be now AE rated? And for the same reason I just explained this, he wouldn't be, because it's whatever zone your structure sits in. So, let's see.
So only part of his
Now,
lot.
is that any
80.
part of the structure or just the living part?
It's just the actual structure, not like the driveway.
Okay, because I lived in a house one time where the base level of the garage was in an AE zone, but the house, because it had like a 5-inch or 4-inch step up to get up into the house, garage was lower than the main thing, and the house was X and the garage was A.
Yeah, and you got an AE rating for that, I'm
Yeah.
guessing, right? They rated you AE?
Yeah.
The reason why is that it's attached to your structure, and I'm sure it shared the same roof line.
Shares the same roof line and everything, but like the garage could flood without ever putting a drop of water within the house.
Yeah. Did you have flood vents on the garage?
No.
Yeah. Well, if the water pushed in through your garage door and then rose enough to start coming in through the door that goes into probably your washroom or something, or maybe your kitchen, then it would flood. That's why they like to have the flood vents on each side. You'll see the new builds have flood vents. It has to be on the sides so water can flow through.
Is that what you call it, flow through? Yeah.
Yeah, they want it to pass through. It could be on this side or this side, or in theory, if it's an attached garage, it could go from front to back. But it can't be the front and one side. It has to be side to side.
It can't be on the side, the living side of the house is on, right?
Yeah, I'm saying
Flow into the house.
Like, let's say this was your house, and like, let's say your garage was on the side here,
Yeah.
and there was no house behind your garage. Like, let's just say it was just like, let's say this was your house and it was just an attached garage. Most aren't like that. Most garages are part of the house and then behind is like a kitchen or something. I'm just talking about if it was truly attached to it, they could have it from the front and flow straight out the back. But 9 out of 10 houses are like this, where the house is behind the garage. But I'll show you this one. I'm sure everybody knows how to get to the elevations from the GIS, right? Let me just back up. I know, right? Let me close this out from here. All right, so here, the property appraiser's website. And then this one actually, funny enough, is 9AE and X500. So what we were just talking about, it doesn't show the line, but we'll see his elevation certificate down there at the bottom, view map, and then view map, and then it'll pull up. If you guys have access to the GIS website and you don't want to go to the property appraiser, you can just go straight there and then just type in the address here. I always like going to the property appraiser so I can see the base flood and just the other info.
How new was that? I mean, like, if we look at Realist, which we all do,
Mhm.
it says 2003 maps in the Realist one. So the one in the GIS, how new was that map?
There in Europe.
Yeah, these are updated,
Okay.
yeah. And we do have a lot of folks asking, like, I'm sure you've seen the Charlotte County interactive maps.
Mhm.
It's at the speed that FEMA's gonna take that, so it was supposed to be this year and then COVID, so probably is now pushed out a couple more years, who knows? I tell everybody if they're buying a house, if it changes, then FEMA lets all the carriers know what properties have been remapped, and then they will adjust their policy. People call us like every 6 months asking if it's been updated yet, and it hasn't.
That's because we went to that thing at the,
Yeah, the county had their meeting
County
and then
meeting,
everybody
yeah.
got very excited,
yeah,
and then the world changed on us, and now it's like, sorry, everything they said is delayed now. But we'll take a look at this one. So after you're here and you got this, shows like your little square around your property, and then you click the layers tab, And then the certificate of elevation, you check that box. And it was a small change in color, but you've probably seen how it got a little darker.
Mhm.
That's because there's an elevation on the property. So if you go here to the I button, identify, and then you click on the house itself. Now down here under the results, you'll see certificate of elevation 1 feature. And then click on this link and it shows the certificate. So like this here is an AE zone. This was done by an elevation surveyor. You'll see Crosstown down 2015. And he verified that the structure, sometimes they notice, sometimes they don't, but he verified that the structure itself is in the AE zone. So we don't really, this is probably what you're talking about, right? Firm
Yeah.
panel?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's because here you'll see the, not to get too technical here, but the vertical datum NGVD 1929. That's the old datum. So they're using reference points that are from a long time ago. I don't know the exact date, but you'll start seeing in the near future where, and some have already changed, where it'll say 88 instead of 1929. The 88 ones are a lot more accurate because they're using more accurate tools to measure that. But that's why your panel is, you'll see this basically every time. I don't even think that this is when they came out with this zone. I'm not 100% sure, sorry.
Okay.
We just always see it say 2003, but this is accurate. This guy here, what we would recommend him doing is the Loma request because he's at a base flood of 9 and his lowest adjacent grade is 9.2. So are you guys are familiar with the Loma request?
I know we've talked about it before.
Yeah, this thing's-
What did you just say? His
Lowest
he's at
adjacent.
9 feet, but the exterior is 9.2.
So you see
That they
here where
higher.
it says 9. So going back to this here, this is just saying that the area, not even necessarily this particular parcel, but just the area is base flood of 9 feet, okay? And then here, his 10.0, what that's representing is his first floor under air. So usually it's when you go from the garage and you step into the kitchen or the washroom, whatever, that's what they're referencing. The first floor under air is a 10. And then here, the garage is 9.4. So as you know, like when you're in the garage and then you step into the house, there's usually a step or 2, right? So like, let's say this garage here said 9.5. And let's say that this person wanted to turn their garage into livable space, because people do that, right? So their elevation, if it was 9.5, would still round up to 10 and it would not affect their flood rate. But if this same person, like let's say they built out the garage, they AC'd it, and now it was livable, if it still said 9.4, then they would be getting an even elevation rate versus a +1, and the difference is like $700. So sometimes when there's houses in older Inglewood, they'll convert those, they'll make them livable so a family can stay, whatever the reason is. And they'll get new elevation certificates because they can't find the old ones. And now they're like, well, this person is paying $800. I got a new certificate and now you're gonna charge me $1,500. How come? And it's because the newest surveyor was putting that from the garage elevation. What would happen is the top of their bottom floor here would now say the garage elevation because it's livable.
Should have poured a couple of inches of concrete
Yeah,
on the
fill
floor.
it in.
Yeah,
Put some nice
Um,
carpeting over it, you know.
yeah, and that's possible, but this one's close. A lot of times we'll see this be maybe like 9.1, 9.2. This probably only has 1 step up, I'm guessing. But you know, some could have 2 or more, depending on how low it is. I had one guy that had a modular home, and they added a garage to it. and literally the guy had like 4 steps. He had to have a contractor come out and put flood vents on both sides of the garage. That way we could exclude the garage elevation because it wasn't livable. But I don't think that costs too much to knock out a block. Better than paying the flood rate. So this person here, like what we would tell them to do is one of 2 things. Let's go back to this. They could go to myfloodstatus.com and they could go to order report and fill this out. Basically what they're doing is they'd be putting in this 92 agate and select. They'd fill out their information and they would do loam application. So it takes 6 to 8 weeks. They would upload the elevation certificate, a copy of their warranty deed, which we can help them pull from the county. Sure you're familiar with the county. Let me see. Under the most recent transaction sale, you can click on the link and they'll show you the deed. They could upload those 2 things, and for $150, they could get this one remapped because the lowest adjacent grade here is at 9.2. So like going back to what that means, the lowest adjacent grade is the grading here around the property. So you know how every home, the dirt slopes away from the lot or from their house down to the edges of the property? So that's the lowest adjacent grade. So if that is higher than the base flood, that's when they can request for a LOMA. The highest adjacent grade is the fill or the dirt that's butting up to the actual house itself. That's why the highest adjacent grade here says 9.6, because there's a slope that goes 9.6 down.
So the highest adjacent grade is actually higher than the garage floor.
Yeah, which goes to show you that if it rains, that garage might be taking some water.
That might be the top of a septic system or something. That might be elevated.
Yeah,
What's it?
let's see if there's any photos. Yeah, you see, they don't even have, no, which the sod isn't gonna matter. They're going off of this actual dirt. And you can see he has a nice slope. I can't tell if he has venting. It's hard to say. Side note, if you have any investors, these people make a killing on these rentals. I had a customer tell me that she was paying, I think, $1,700 or $1,600 4-bedroom, but with no pool, no nothing. And I think that they were building these for like 200 grand or something.
Wow.
Just banging them out and charging like 16 to 1,700, which is insane.
Where are they?
South Gulf Cove. The lot can't be worth more than 8 grand.
Mhm.
It's probably like nothing against.
Look, is it full-size lot?
They are what it's supposed on.
Nah.
Looks a bit narrow, you know.
Let's see.
Probably 80 by 125.
Yeah, the other ones are 78.2, so probably the same.
9.3. Yeah, probably right in there.
Yeah, one thing that we do, like let's say they didn't have an elevation certificate, but a buyer is wondering like, okay, well, what do you guess this thing could be for flood, right? We'll quote it through the private flood market to give them like a definite high point. But another thing that you can do is you can go to the layers tab here and go to spot elevations. So if you go to spot elevations, you see how it says the back here is 8.3. Now, worst case, this would most likely be an even elevation. Thankfully, this is even higher, and you can see that this says 8.2. But sometimes, and like this is 9.9. So this is generally speaking a pretty high area. Some spots you'll see it'll say like 6. And if the backyard, like let's say this backyard said 6, then we would tell them the private flood market is probably gonna be their rate. They could always spend money on an elevation certificate, but, if it comes back at a -2, then they're gonna be using the private flood quote anyways. That's just like a little
Couldn't they just haul in a lot of fill and bring it up to,
no, the house is already built.
oh, it's already built?
Yeah, if the house isn't built, the builder will just build that into their price and say, hey, the county forces us to bring you up to a +1. When they were making that code change, some builders, not to be named, that are no longer around, they were coming to our office asking if they kind of push things through, can they still use the even elevation versus the new code? I don't even know, I doubt that they even finished those houses, but,
You're out on bail.
That's the
Yeah.
one.
yeah.
The ones.
What I fear is that +1 could be today, but 5 years from now, they might come back and say, hey, now it needs to be a +2. And then those houses next to other ones that are negative are gonna be in trouble. I'm sure we've all seen the houses where like, this house will be down here and the other guy is like 5 feet in the air, it seems. Yeah, the thing with flood, I don't even know what would happen, but FEMA has something that says, to be considered a flood, it has to be 2 adjacent lots. So your lot plus 1 adjacent. So basically like, if all of that water drained off and pooled onto your house and flooded your home, I don't even know if that would be, back to your question about a liability issue on the other guy. I don't know that, but FEMA doesn't consider it a flood unless 2 lots are affected side by side.
Does it have to be 2 full lots? I know.
That's ask Gary. Just kidding. We tell everybody to get flood. I mean, we're in Florida, so it definitely could happen. Now, if someone's in an X zone, obviously it's optional, or if it's a cash buyer, we'll have investors that will say, look, I'm just going to take my chances on this whole thing. And that's certainly their right. I'm not that much of a gambler.
2 questions.
Mhm.
So if you're in an X flood zone and you choose to get flood insurance, do you need an elevation certificate?
No, because you're getting the X zone rate, which is a good thing. Also, too, another benefit about getting a flood policy in an X zone is that if you ever were remapped to an AE zone, then you don't need to get an elevation certificate. They're gonna do basically give you what's called newly mapped rates, and essentially it's the X zone plus a couple dollars. And then every year, they're just gonna start increasing you $30, $30, $30. So what we'll do for somebody that has been remapped from the X zone to an AE zone, they don't have to rush and go get an elevation certificate, but it's still encouraged to get one, because eventually if they wait 5 or 10 years, that rate is gonna be potentially higher than what the elevation rate would have been, But no, you don't have to get one.
Second question. Unless someone else has one. Okay, so we recently had, we sold a Stilts house and the seller was paying like $450. And the buyer ended up taking it over. They had to get some documents signed. It was our listing. But what are the criteria to be able to assume somebody's FEMA flood policy?
They have to, well, the seller has to sign paperwork. The buyer, we tell the buyer that if he goes that route with the seller and tries to assume their policy, that the seller is literally gifting that policy to them. So like, if they're 1 month into that flood policy, they're just losing their 11 months. They're not getting a refund back.
Oh,
Yeah. So because you're essentially saying, here's my policy. So if they're 11, like let's say they're 1 month into it, that could be used to the seller's advantage. Like if there's something that needs repaired and he doesn't want to spend $1,000 for that repair or whatever it is, they're like, look, you're going to assume my flood policy. You're paid up until April or whatever. So instead of me getting money back, which I wouldn't, I'm going to gift you that policy. So I had a guy that, I think he was in Minnesota Key. He loved us. He went with us on the home, but not the flood, because the seller had a policy where it was like $500, and our quote was like 2,000. For anybody
So my
listening, we're
seller
good
won't-
rate, but
So my seller won't get a refund of his flood policy.
no, not if the other guy assumed it. No.
They could have passed some money.
That's a big aha.
Yeah,
Yeah.
the seller signed everything. I didn't even know that he wouldn't get a
Was he expecting a refund or?
I think they paid that bill like maybe 3 or 4 months ago, but it's only $450, so it's not
Yeah.
that much.
Still, it's money, so I get it. I mean,
Yeah,
the one guy I was referring to, the problem with his is that the original owner had a policy based off of the house being elevated on stilts, but while he lived there, he enclosed it in and made it livable. So when we tried to exclude the bottom, we couldn't because now it's livable. And they were like, well, the guy has AC, it's carpeted, it's like a game room or something. So we just told him, assume his policy, right? And as long as we have the same carrier, then we could just transfer it to us on the renewal. I mean, I'm not trying to like, for any of your clients that have ever gave you guys feedback, we don't try to hard sell anybody. I mean, we try to help them and hope that they want to go with us, but I'm not gonna make them be like, oh, if you don't take the, flood, you're not getting a home.
right.
I wouldn't want to pay 4 times more either,
But are all policies then transferable if the seller is willing to sign off on it?
Yeah, there shouldn't be any reason why, I don't know about private flood market policies. FEMA though, yeah. Private flood, there's a lot of private flood carriers out there. Plus, homeowner carriers are starting to add flood endorsements to the flood policies, which essentially is like a private flood market policy attached to their home. We don't like that though, personally, just because if they want to leave them on the home side, now they're sitting there exposed on the flood side and they're like, okay, well, what am I gonna do with the flood now? So yeah, we try not to have them attached that way. But this one way that I was talking to you about the my flood status, the $150, that's the slower way, 6 to 8 weeks. If they want it super rushed, like let's say that they're trying to sell the home and they think that they're going to qualify or that they know that they'll qualify, but they want to make it more marketable to people, right? Then they can do the ELOMA, and the ELOMA will come back to them in 1 to 10 business days. It's $400, but if they're in a neighborhood of people that are in a flood zone and there's a lot of houses for sale, and they want to be like that one house in the whole neighborhood that's going to be in an X zone to make it more attractive, that's an option.
And if we have a property that's like that, can we call you and you can tell us if they're gonna qualify or not?
No, yes, you can.
That was good.
No, I've even,
So it's worthwhile to spend the $400.
yeah, I've actually followed up with some folks that spent the 400, and one guy, it looked like he was going to qualify, but then they did some more digging, and apparently the whole lot had fill brought in. Not, a lot of times they'll bring the dirt and place it in the center, they'll push it down, and they'll put the slab on top. Well, this actually had fill spread out through the whole parcel. Which FEMA they won't consider that to be able to be removed. I don't know of any way we can tell that. I think that was these guys, they're like a FEMA sponsored company to be able to do this. I'd imagine that they probably checked with neighboring lots and wondered why these are super low and this guy's the only lot that's, higher than everybody else. One person that did pay for that, they refunded his money. Yeah, they told him, look, you're not going to qualify, so here's your money back. I don't like telling folks that though, because if you promise that and then they change their mind and then they're like, well, you told me they would, there's a number that they can call if they're really wanting to, say, hey, would I get my money back, just to verify with them.
Yeah.
The other way to go is, And I just signed up with this, what if you ever heard of Loom? You ever heard of Loom? It's pretty cool. You can actually, it does a screen capture of what you're doing on your computer, and it records your voice, and it's for free. And it actually, if you want to record classes, and you want your screen to be shared, so when you share the video, whatever you're doing on your, like if I wanted to do this class here, they'll record it for you.
LOOM?
LOOM, yeah, Loom, yeah, free screen and video recording. If you have a camera, it'll even let you have like your face talking and your screen up. So you could do a screen capture of what you're looking at on your computer, plus recording your face and your video and your voice. Yeah, it's free. But I say that to show you this. Let's see. So the letter of map change, you could do this for free. So somebody would come in here, they would create an account, email address, password, whatever. And then when they were to go through this application, basically 99% of the stuff they're going to ask for is right on the certificate. The lot number, the block number, the section number, the longitude and latitude coordinates. It'll ask you all of this stuff. You just got to know where to find it on the elevation certificate, and you can submit one of those applications for free. So if you have someone who's just like, look, I'm pretty capable, I don't want to spend the money, they can do it through this site for free. What they do is they just they fill out the application. It asks for the elevation certificate, the warranty deed, and then what I always do is I just tell them to go and print the GIS website, so because they want to see the lot lines. I had multiple people do that. But yeah, lots of hopefully exciting stuff.
Very exciting.
Yeah.
So my neighbor built this big, really nice house,
Mhm.
and triple garage, lots of, and after they finished it, he had somebody come in, close off all those vents on his garage. Yeah, I figured he was in trouble. So in a couple of years, when somebody spots it and says, "Weren't there supposed to be vents there?"
Yeah, how come you closed it off though? I mean, you just didn't like the
I think he
holes,
was kind of
or?
a neatness freak. Yeah, I didn't want dust blowing in or people looking at his cars or something. I don't know. I don't know.
Yeah.
I stayed out of it. I don't want to find out.
Yeah, people are surprised.
If you're on the Sarasota County
that-
site, is
sometimes
it
unless you
similar
know
to
better,
getting
yeah,
the elevation certificate from the Charlotte County one?
There is a similar, and they show it in a list though.
No, but
Yeah, when you go to theirs, they don't have, let me see, I have all the links saved at my house, at my office, so let's see if I can find it from here. This is a link in mine. I can send it, do you want me to send you the link when I get back to the office?
please, yeah.
I can do that. That's fine. Yeah, because I have it saved as a favorite.
Could you send it to me as well?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, they're not as easy as the other one.
Uh-huh.
Me too, please.
Can you remember us?
Yeah.
What is this thing called? Kyle?
Oh, I was just showing them the elevation certificates on the Sarasota County website.
Oh,
Because I do look at the flood maps a lot when I'm in the product, when I'm looking at a home or lot, I always go to that flood map, Sometimes it's like easy to read and then other times it's confusing.
Yeah, this is, their interactive map
Yeah,
with the layers.
yeah.
Yeah, it's the same layer tab, and then just put in the address. I like Charlotte County's better. I don't know, something about theirs is, it's not as friendly.
Yeah.
I know that there's a list somewhere on mine, it goes.
So I don't know that I've ever seen anything in the, you've got in here in your folder, the B or X. Moderate risk, not lender required, but recommended. I don't know that I've ever seen many Bs.
Yeah, we don't see a whole lot of those, thankfully. Ds are the ones that you want to worry about. D, yeah. Those are the undetermined flood zones. We've seen them out in Bobcat Ranch. Bobcat, sorry. Babcock.
Oh,
Babcock.
Babcock,
Yeah.
Babcock.
Babcock Ranch.
How-
Oh, because it's too new.
Yeah, so those undetermined, I had a lady that had one out there and a new bill was $3,000. Yeah, the problem with that neighborhood and some other areas where they're undetermined is there's no base flood. So if they're at, let's say 12.5, they're like, okay, cool, but what is that off of? 8, 10, 7? They don't know.
Might be 14.
Yeah, so it's a problem because when they're in an undetermined zone, the county only makes them build 3 feet above whatever the dirt level is, not the base flood.
Oh, that's like a whole, that's a huge subdivision.
Yeah.
Yeah, what I had that lady do, I actually was able to get her, I think we got her remapped, but she went to the floodplain manager and they got something typed up that basically said like, this is the base flood for the area. She also had to go to the surveyor and have him put in in the comment section on the certificate that he estimated that the base flood was 8 or 10 or whatever it was, and they were able to use that. I got that lady down to, I think like $600 from
Wow.
3,000. It was a lot of work, but I mean,
But now you know.
now she's
Now
a
you're the
customer
man.
for life, going
Got
from
it.
3,000 to a couple hundred. Yeah, we see D, those are the ones that are scary. She actually had to close at the 3,000 rate and then get it adjusted later.
I used to see Ds years ago. I'd see Ds and I'd see Bs.
Yeah, thankfully, a lot of what we're all doing here is in like South Gulf Cove, Inglewood, Rotunda, and they've been around for a while, so we don't get a lot of Ds. But out there in the middle of nowhere where they haven't really mapped a lot, that's where we'll see the D. I'm trying to think of other stuff that's been, it's flood, so thankfully it doesn't change as much as like health insurance. That stuff's crazy.
It is, especially as you get older.
Yeah, I was letting everybody know in case you didn't hear, some companies for shingle roofs are going to 10 years.
I just spoke with Riley because I was looking at like 15 years, but she said somewhere 20 years. So whenever I'm running an offer on a 15-year-old roof right now. And Riley did say that you could probably work off of the WinMint or instead of a roof certification, that at 15 years you didn't have to have a roof certification.
What was the age of the property?
88, and the roof by permit is 15 years old.
Yeah, I mean, the roof cert isn't, it's not such an issue if the carrier is okay with that age of roof. Like, the only problem is, like, let's say, and inspectors, I'm sure won't like this in a few years, but these carriers are starting to like pull away from inspectors and they're starting to do their own. Just like he was saying that Frontline came in and did their own inspection. A lot of carriers are doing that. They're saying, look, what you're sending us is great, but what inspector doesn't know this whole 5+ year requirement, right?
Mhm.
So they'll be like, oh yeah, it's got 5+. But in reality, it might have 2 or 3. And nothing against inspectors, if any are on this, but they're going by their best guess, right? And
Mhm.
carriers are saying, look, that's fine, but yes, you're the inspector, but we're the ones paying out the claim if there's a loss. So the ones that aren't doing the full interior, like Frontline, I would say majority of them are still doing the walk around. Just because they want to see for like lifting, curling, is there any like obvious backed out nails? Sometimes you can see like bowed a little bit, could be an indication of some damage.
Well, one of the questions when I was talking with her, because I think from a realtor point of view is, and she had said, well, they can, sometimes afterwards they'll do an inspection. I said, well, in our window, so when I'm making an offer on this house with 10 days of inspection, I want to know from a realtor point of view for my client, is that going to need, will it be insurable, or would that then insurance companies say, no, you need a new roof because you're now you're negotiating $12,000. And so does it behoove us in the inspection period to submit that wind mitt to you for you to quote, can you insure it without the inspection if it's in that now 10 plus years?
So I've had that actually happen where
And I'm just speaking loud so
yeah,
it's
no
recorded.
problem. So
I'm not yelling.
yeah, so it's recorded for future use. No, I'm just kidding. What we've done in that situation is we've uploaded it, we got them to review it and approve it. But what underwriting, these are insurance companies, so they know the lawyer lingo, right? Yes, we'll accept the inspection, we'll give the approval, but if our company goes out there and does a walk around and we don't agree with this inspection, then we still hold the right to cancel them or force them to get the roof. Because you know when somebody's taking a picture,
Yeah.
the right
best
lighting,
picture.
the right
Yes.
angle,
Yeah.
just further enough back where it's kind of blurry, so
Mhm.
not perfect. They'll only give what they can see, but if they
Mhm.
come out there and like they're like, oh, well, this whole corner just happened to be omitted from the photos, so we didn't review that. I never like to give them nobody a guarantee because I'm not the one insuring the property, you know?
Right, but for
Um,
us as realtors, so I'm saying to us as realtors, if that roof is 10 years or older, and I've looked at roofs, the house I bought on Meridian Street, I thought the roof was great. Once we did an inspection, it was not insurable. So we want to make sure when we're negotiating for our clients, whether it be our seller or a buyer, that we're negotiating things we're good for the roof for 1 to 5 years. And if insurance comes out and says in a month, no, it's a new roof, then that puts us in a tough situation where we're really not, I don't want to say the word protecting, but getting all the information to our client. And with the uncertainty, because then we'd have to say, okay, they may come out and not insure this.
I would say if they paid for a 4-point or if they paid for a roof cert and you guys are using inspectors, I'm sure you use the inspectors that you trust, that are you trusting their judgment. Most likely they're gonna agree with what the underwriter is gonna say.
Is the wind mitt as strong as the roof cert, or should we have a roof cert as well?
I would get the roof cert if you want to know for sure.
Okay.
Just because with the wind mitigation, what that does is it shows the discounts, but it also shows a lot of photos, right? So if we uploaded that and they're like, okay, great, it looks good from here, sure, we'll take it. But if the roof cert comes back and the inspector says like, hey, this thing has 7 to 10 years, right? Even if he's off by a couple years, that's still at least 5 plus.
Right.
If you get the roof cert and he's like, this thing has 5 plus, I'd be a little shaky on that one.
Is the roof cert better than the wind mitt with the 4-point?
So the roof cert is cheaper than a 4-point.
Right, so,
like if they don't need a 4-point and they don't necessarily care to verify it in the ages and conditions of like the HVAC and the electrical and the plumbing, then they don't need a 4-point if it's not over a certain amount of years.
is that 35 years for you?
We typically, I think on this it might say 30. Some carriers, yeah, this says 30 plus. Some carriers will go up to 40, But the reason why this says 30 is investment properties are all 30,
Mm-hmm.
so DP3s. Also, some carriers, a lot of them are actually starting to do their own now. I mean, we have one, the UPC that I was talking about earlier. What they'll do is they'll either come do their own inspection, or they'll send a link to the customer and have the customer take their own photos, which to me is,
I've had
Scary.
that happen where my customer.
yeah, I believe it. Also with COVID, I don't know if maybe those were just temporary measures to make somebody feel
It's a
better.
couple years ago.
Oh, good. Heritage, definitely, if it's over 25 years old, they're coming out. Frontline, if it's over 5 years, they're coming out.
5 years.
Yeah. Yeah, they come out for new builds and 5 years and older,
Come out every 5 years then?
and every 5 years.
A
Yeah, yeah.
lot of gas being burned up in P&C.
It is. I think that what they're thinking is that if they have the client spend a couple $1,000 on repairs, then they're not spending $20,000 remodeling a kitchen because the sink blew out. It does keep their rates lower. I mean, I don't see rate increases a lot with them unless it's secondary properties. They went up, like with Frontline specifically, about $500.
For second homes.
Yeah, but they
Because
don't
they're-
require.
Because they're not occupied all the time.
Yeah, they don't require an alarm system, so that's the trade-off. You pay a little, going back to paying for the risk. They're charging you more, but they don't require an alarm. So whenever we see that, we present it 2 ways to your clients. We're like, here's Frontline, if they have the best rate, they don't require an alarm. These guys here are $300 more, but you don't need an alarm. So yeah,
Mm-hmm.
it's
It's ever changing.
yeah, it's definitely a fine like tuning game. I mean, you know Riley, she's good. I was letting them know that we have a full-time reshopper now. The guy spends literally all day long reshopping clients. Riley spends all day quoting.
I appreciate that very much.
Yeah, I know. Our goal is if somebody calls in the morning, we want to get that quote out to them the same day. If they call at 3 or 4 o'clock and she's all the way caught up with all the quotes, they might still get it the same day, but definitely by that next morning. It just, for one, it makes them feel confident, like, okay, if they're
Yeah.
staffed where they can get it out fast enough. But also, I had to kind of let go of the quoting, although you know how it is, like you want to do everything yourself. I find that doing everything yourself will actually make you make more mistakes because you're rushing and you're not giving it the attention that it needs. So sometimes you just got to trust the
Leverage.
people.
Yeah.
Yeah. So she's really great actually. All day quoting. She makes sure she places it with the right company. That way they're not getting cancellations in 30 days. I've had clients tell me, look, I'm getting a quote from X. We know some people shop and that's fine, right? Like this carrier or this agency gave me a quote through this carrier and you gave me a quote through this one. Yours was slightly higher, but I also seen that you offer this company. Why didn't you offer me that one? And I've actually had to send some potential clients the underwriting guidelines and say, look, your roof is 20 years old or 21 years old. They're not going to accept that. And I even had them call other agents back and say, hey, I was doing some shopping. This agent told me that I needed a new roof. And they're like, yeah, that's true. You actually are going to need a new roof. And she's like, well, why didn't you tell me that? I'm like, well, they'll let you know.
Yeah.
But I'm not going to have somebody sitting there on their couch one day and they're getting a letter saying, look, you need a new roof 30 days after you just bought it. And then they're coming back to you guys asking, who'd you send me to, or why are they telling me a new roof, or what home did you sell me, you know? So our goal is to get it done fast, but done right, really. But yeah, it's been busy for you guys too, or?
Crazy.
Yeah, we've got a lot of new buyers, but also a lot of refinances, like all
Oh,
day
because
long.
it's so low.
Refi. Yeah, sometimes I found that about this. Some lenders jump the gun where they'll send out the refi request to have us update the policies, and that person that owns the home that's shopping it around, they're not even necessarily committed to that bank,
Oh,
and that bank's trying to get it all done soon. So we made it a practice to call the client and be like, did you close? Are you closing with them? Did you pick them? Because I'm not going to put someone else's lien holder on there and then
Right.
they have a loss a week later and now we're writing a check to them plus.
Wrong people.
Yeah, exactly.
Wow,
So
thank you.
that's all I have.
Awesome, thank you. I don't know if
Thank
Blake
you very
caught
much.
you. Do you have 10 minutes?
Yes, you as
Okay.
well.
What I wanted to do was do